Welcome back to another episode of the Cardinal Chronicles. It is the end of the 2025 football season, but there's still a lot going on. There's a Notre Dame recap to talk about. There's a hire to talk about. There's a transfer portal to talk about. And in addition, there's some other big sports we want to cover today. So tune in because this Cardinal Chronicles episode is going to be awesome.
Yeah, guys, welcome to another show. Alex, how are you doing on your final football show of the season? We'll get to that in a little bit, but how are you guys doing today?
Been good. Sucks to end the season on a loss, but lots of hope for the future of the program.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. We got some good stuff. Before we talk about football, Luca, give us a quick rundown about we got basketball and women's soccer happening on campus. Just give us a quick little rundown of what's going on there.
Yeah, I'll start with basketball. They played in the Acrisure Invitational down in Palm Desert. Absolutely dominant. They were down 10 against Minnesota. They were down 15 against St. Louis. Came back and won both of those games. Shout out Benny Gieler, game winner. Then they come back on Monday, get another win. Shout out Jeremy Dent Smith. He's been absolutely awesome. Shout out Chisholm Okpara. Shout out Abuka Corey. They've been great. Potential March Madness team, I will say. And then I do want to talk about women's soccer real quick because they are in the College Cup. They got a 5-1 victory over Michigan State. Sucks to see my Spartans lose, I can't lie to you. But I love to see Stanford win. It was cool to cover that game. And now they're going to Kansas City this weekend. They play Duke on Friday. If they win, they're in the championship. And I will add, if they win that game, they will be the 50th year of a Stanford team winning a national championship, which is absolutely incredible.
Yeah, very
Right.
cool stuff happening around campus. Alex, you got any thoughts about that? I know you were a little bit into women's
Yeah,
soccer.
I've been watching the women's soccer season on the side, and my goodness, how dominant is that women's
Oh
soccer
my
team?
God.
It's like you start with a starting lineup with Jasmine Ike, Charlotte Kohler, Eleanor Klinger, and Andrea Kitahara, and oh by the way, you bring in Ali Montoya off the bench.
Yeah.
It's kind of disgusting how good the Stanford women's soccer team is.
There's a
We I mean, I've never seen a college cup run this dominant from a Stanford team ever. And so I have it gives me a bunch of confidence going into the college cup. And as Andrea Kitahara told me privately, we want to keep the stress levels low.
Yeah, well, there
I
you
love it.
go.
Hey, extra shout out Elise Evans, best defender in the nation.
Well, while we got one form of football going on in the College Cup, we got the other football, the American football that just ended for Stanford, coming off of a loss to Notre Dame, which honestly was to be expected. But overall, record aside, it was a pretty successful year overall in the Frank Reich tenure. He went 4-8, but the Stanford Axe is back. But yeah, before we talk about just any offseason stuff, let's talk about that Notre Dame game. What we liked, what we didn't like, and kind of what we saw from Stanford in that one.
Yeah, Notre Dame's good.
Yeah, they're very good. I
Ours is
knew that was
good.
yeah.
Jeremiah Love is good. It's a really good team. When I originally predicted 28-10, I didn't realize that I would be happy losing by 29, which is funny. Like I actually thought we played well and we lost by a lot more than I expected. I liked the offense, especially late. I thought they did a good job. Shout out Charlie Meyer, right?
Mhm.
Shout out to him. Shout out to the whole team. They played well. Sam Roush was good. Defensively, not great, but it's one of those things where it's like you're playing Notre Dame. You're not gonna win. Do what you can. We covered. Hopefully, we can keep Notre Dame out of the playoff. Shout out Miami for getting that early win. But yeah, I mean, we'll see. Not much analyzation. It was a lot of bad. But like I said, I thought there was positives that came out of it just from a moral perspective. Um, and I'm not disappointed the way Frank Reich ended his era. I'm actually very happy with the way the entire Frank Reich era went, to be honest.
Yeah, it was a very interesting year. I think you look at the loss and obviously going into the game, you have the tale of two programs, right? You got the Irish who are playing for college football playoff spot and seeding, and you got Stanford that was kind of playing for pride at that point because they just come off of a game against Cal. But I think the season overall sets the culture, right? You look at what Reich, the culture he was able to instill, and the culture that the new coach brings. More on that in a bit, but the new culture that he brings, and kind of, obviously you look at signing day with the amount of guys that they brought in. you're clearly seeing a shift in kind of dynamics of how football at Stanford's being run. And, it might take some time, but I can sense that there's going to be some success coming. But, obviously that Notre Dame game was a game that was, I call it the cherry on top game, right? You already beat Cal, so that game was more of like a for pride game. If you win, great. If you lose, it's okay. But now we're entering a new era. On Friday, right before the game, Stanford announced that they were hiring Tavita Pritchard, former quarterback from '06 to '09, a longtime assistant coach with the program. They announced they were going to hire him as the head coach. They announced that they were going to bring him in to lead the program for the foreseeable future. And look, at first, I will admit, I was I wouldn't say very against this hire. You guys can make the judge of how against it I was. I don't know how against it I seemed like I was, but I wasn't really for it. I was very much of the notion this is an anticlimactic hire, all that quietness for nothing. What are we doing? Why couldn't Stanford swing higher? But as I watched the press conference, as I have kind of done my due diligence on the guys that they talked to, kind of hearing Andrew speak, there was no better candidate for this job than Pritchard. I am a firm believer that Tavita Pritchard is born for this job. He's been getting praise from ex-players. Alex has even said that he's heard some stuff on his own about him. I mean, from what we're hearing, this is a home run hire. So boys, what do we think of this hire? Is Stanford football going to be back under Tavita Pritchard's leadership?
The answer is yes, but before we start, I do want to ask Alex to give a little rundown of the Notre Dame game because I bet there's a few things
That's
to.
a good point. I am so sorry, Alex, that we totally
Yes,
skipped
sir.
over
You're,
that.
you're good. I mean, I'll keep it brief. Not much to discuss. I'm actually kind of surprised. I'm going to be a little more pointed in my criticism than Dylan and Luca for once, which is actually quite a change in the
It is
show.
a change.
I
A
thought
Christmas
that
miracle, as we might say.
I know exactly. Um, I will maintain that Jeremiah Love is should win the Heisman Trophy. Um, it is I will first address all the Notre Dame fans in the room who hated my tweet saying that Wilfredo Ibar was not intentionally trying to knee Jeremiah Love. As one of the most ridiculous takes that I've seen out of Notre Dame fans. It is very rare in football where someone is actively trying to absolutely injure or end the career of
I
someone
saw
else.
that too. I agree with you.
Completely ridiculous. Guys, what are we doing? Like, what are we doing?
He barely even
I
touched him too. I find it ridiculous.
yeah, like look, um, unfortunate freak injury all around. I'd hate to see it derail his Heisman hopes. I, for one, if I had a Heisman vote, I'd be voting for Jeremiah Love.
Me too. Yep.
But yeah, that's first thing I'll say. Second thing is, I'm more pointed in my criticism, and actually this leads into kind of talking about Tavita and what he wants to bring to the defensive side and the offensive side in the sense that we knew what Notre Dame was going to do coming into the game. They were going to run the damn ball. They're going to run the damn ball, and they're going to run the damn ball. And Stanford had all week to scheme up. And maybe it's a talent issue. I'd like to think that our players are talented enough to handle, especially given that we have the second highest tackle leader in the ACC in Matt Rose. Um, but we got owned on the ground, and that is a coaching issue. That is a defensive coordinator issue, and I was very disappointed. I thought that Notre Dame could run their offense at will against us. There was nothing we schemed to stop them. You got no pressure on the quarterback. We didn't bring the proper pressure packages. We didn't stop the run very well. Even against the third string running back, like what were we doing here? Um, I thought very very nice touch as people stated. Charlie Meyer coming in. He's done so much for the program behind the scenes, and even as the lowest quarterback on the depth chart, it was nice to see him get his moment. For all the people who want Charlie Meyer to be a starting quarterback, I wish that you were right. But there's a reason he's the last quarterback on the depth chart. So let's kind of be real on that. But very nice that he got his moment. Great that he scored a touchdown against his family's team. And we covered the spread. As a great person a great person once told me, good teams win games, great teams cover the spread.
Exactly. Exactly. But now that we have the last game out of the way and we're nearing a new era of Stanford football. New era, kind of old era though, however you want to look at it. A new era
That's a new
because
era.
well, it's a new era because Tavia's taken over as a head coach, but old era, quote unquote, because a guy who's so familiar with the program is finally coming home after being gone in the NFL for a few years. But like I said before, at first I was like, is there no way that Stanford could have gotten a better hire? You have guys like Jim Mora who are available and all that. But now I'm like, shoot, I think they made the right call. Good thing they let Mora go to Colorado State because I don't think I've ever listened to a press conference from a coach where you can just feel that he is Stanford. He lives and breathes Stanford. He is Stanford. He knows that school, that program inside and out. He was a part of that program as the leader at quarterback. So is Tavita Pritchard, is this job what he's destined for? Like, what do we think he's going to bring to Stanford football that Stanford football has been lacking for so many campaigns so far?
I guess I'll take the moral side to this. I actually wrote an entire article. I know Dylan went more into like takeaways on Stanford
Yeah,
on
yeah.
the side. I was all about like I literally wrote a 500-page article about the morals about how
500 pages.
sorry, words.
I'm kidding. I know.
500 words about how I absolutely love the way he talks, the way he laughs, the way how awesome his family is, the way he came in like I don't want to like culture appropriate, but whatever he was wearing was absolutely cool. And I
Yeah, he's
had
wearing a lei. He was wearing a lei and like
yeah,
a
yeah.
standard.
Fala.
I don't, yeah, whatever it was,
Yep.
I absolutely loved it. I let him know he's an awesome guy. Very cool. Shakes everybody's hand, looks them in the eyes when he talks, answers questions thoroughly. He's really funny. Like I genuinely was laughing like legitimately like the entire time with him and Luck just like duking it out over who should have started back in the day. Like it was absolutely awesome to see. And whether, Ben Parker, shout out Ben Parker, he kind of stole my question, but like he figured I was going to ask it because we were talking about it the night before. He basically talked about how he was the quarterbacks coach at Stanford. He was the running backs coach at Stanford. I believe a wide receivers coach.
He
He was
was a
offensive
defensive. He was start. He
coordinator.
started. He started as a defensive assistant
He
at
was a
Stanford.
defensive
Like
assistant. He was a graduate assistant. He wasn't a head coach. I get it. But he's done a lot to the point where I think for a guy that's never been a head coach, I think it makes sense. And Luck alluded to the fact that there was 30 plus guys that they could have hired and they went with Pritchard, right? And don't diss on Jim Moore. Jim Moore is awesome. I don't know
no,
if
no,
he
no, no,
would have
no.
been the better hire or not. I think he's a really good coach. But regardless, he is like you said, he is Stanford, and I don't know whether that's the right move or not. Obviously, it's hard to tell, but from what we've seen, not from a resume perspective, but strictly vibes, strictly like what he loves, what he means. He's still a good quarterback today. He was throwing absolute dimes on the field after the interview to his sons. He's still good, and you can tell he wants to. You can tell he wants to be at Stanford. You can tell he loves it. Um, and yeah, I mean, it's gonna take a big transfer portal to form an opinion on him. So I don't know if I want to say it's a bad hire or a good hire because it could be amazing, it could be awful. I really have no idea. Let's see how the transfer portal goes. But in terms of vibes, great hire. There's a reason that there's so many guys on National Signing Day that didn't decommit.
Well, I was gonna say, let me add you one on that point about the transfer portal. There is a that it says a lot about Coach Pritchard that a quarterback like MMJ from Reardon. I know we can't talk recruits, but he already signed, so I'm sure we can now, right? Am I correct about that? Okay, so there's a reason why a guy like him decommitted from Vanderbilt and not only committed to Stanford, but still signed with Stanford even
I
after
mean,
the
he
Tavita thing
decommitted from
happened.
Vanderbilt because the number one quarterback in the
Yes,
country.
but then he came to Stanford very quickly and still signed with them even
Sure.
before, like, so there's a reason why that was able to happen. It
Yeah.
says a lot about how big the recruiting class. They had over 20 guys signed today,
And most of them were committed before.
and most of them were still committed before. They had over all those guys. I don't even how many decommitments did they get between?
Ooh,
So they
one.
got
It
two.
was
They
the O
got
lineman to
one.
UCLA, right?
Alex is showing one. They got
One.
one decommitment out of that entire group. Do you know how insane? The,
Look
Oh,
the
at Penn
sorry. No,
State.
I lied. Two.
two
Yes.
I was gonna say I
still
thought it was one
that
more.
two is still a very small number when you
But look
compare
at
it.
Penn State. They lost their entire team.
Yes, so that goes to show you what the belief that they have. But now, Alex, let's hear from the man himself who was very mum on the process, but also was trying to tell us stuff throughout the process. Let's hear what he thinks about the hire. Alex, the floor is yours, my guy.
I did a whole space on why Tavita Pritchard is a good hire.
He did.
Turned out
Yes,
it
you guys
didn't.
should listen to that if you haven't yet. It's on
It
Stanford
turned
Football Updates. It's on there. It's very good.
it turned out that I ruffled some feathers with Stanford fan social media and the message board geniuses out there. I who were very much against the hire. You cannot get more Stanford than Tavita Pritchard. That man lives, breathes, and dies Stanford football. I think I've privately told you guys that the equivalent in basketball is Kyle Smith
I
of a
disagree,
hire.
actually. I don't agree
Yeah.
with that.
No,
Kyle Smith is
I
like
agree with
a
that.
world
I
class.
was thinking about that comment that you made, and I was thinking about him like, yeah, that's a good comparison.
Look, the uh and I think his ceiling is Kalani Sitake at BYU. The way he
Still,
talks, the way he carries
that's really
himself
high.
out. I watched the Kalani Sitake BYU press conference where they announced his extension. Tavita sounds very similar to him. In terms of the demeanor and the way he speaks about football and what it means to coach a college football team. Um, you guys touched on it. This was a very comprehensive search. And so I push back against any notion that this was a good old boy hire. Like, we interviewed over 30 people and they just weren't fits. They were not fits for the Stanford football job. This is a unique job, guys. Like, we're not going to be hiring, I mean, we're not going to be hiring Nick Saban. I'd love to have Nick Saban, but we're not going to hire a Nick Saban, or a more realistic one is an Alex Golesh, because Alex Golesh doesn't necessarily understand the unique challenges that come with Stanford football recruiting. Tavita gets it. He is our best Stanford football recruiter we've ever had. He recruited Davis Mills. He recruited KJ Costello. He recruited Kevin Hogan. He recruited Tanner McKee. He has
McCaffrey
recruited
too, right?
he recruited Christian McCaffrey. He recruited Bryce Love. He was David Shaw's main recruiter. We just rehired the guy who consistently brought in top 25 recruiting classes even during the downturn of Stanford football
Let me
between
just point
2018
out,
and
by the way,
2020.
Alex, on your point, I wrote an article today on signing day. Stanford right now, as of we speak right now, they have the 41st ranked recruiting class, which all things considered, by the way, is very good.
It is good.
Oh,
Good.
oh, by the way, on recruiting, we flipped Dre Pollard, who was a
Yeah.
four star from UW, and we flipped, or we didn't flip, but we got a 3-star offensive lineman, Emin Alexander, who was considering BYU. Like, this is by all stretches of the imagination a a great signing day for Stanford football, and part of it is that Tavita was able to convince um, current commits to stay committed, and he was able to flip, which I can't say how hard it is for a new head coach to flip, like to flip 4 stars. It's really, really hard unless you're a very well respected Lane
Unless you're
Kiffin-esque
Bill
head
Belichick.
coach, or you're Bill Belichick,
Yeah.
exactly. So, going back to Tavita, a couple things I really, really liked. You guys mentioned his upbringing. He's going to bring that same Samoan upbringing to Stanford. I think it's a great thing. Um, he was talking about faith, integrity, but most importantly, brotherhood. Like, this is he understood that the fall of Stanford football between 2018 and 2022 had to do with the locker room. It had to do with a lack of brotherhood amongst the Stanford locker room. He's going to bring that back. I think that he's learned a lot under Cliff Kingsbury and Dan Quinn. He referenced Cliff Kingsbury and Dan Quinn way more than David Shaw and Jim Harbaugh, which is very, very fascinating to me. Um, I think that
Yeah, he learned a lot. I think I was gonna say before. I think those I guess 2.5, I guess years in the NFL he spent. I told Alex this. There's two theories. A, he's using that now as leverage. He can tell recruits, I have NFL experience. I helped develop Jaden Daniels. I have that pedigree. So there's that. Number two, he's definitely coming back as a much more grown and polished coach. He's not coming back as the same Tavita Pritchard that left in 2022. He's coming as a guy who's worked with some of the best offensive minds in football. He's worked alongside some very talented players. He's helped them grow. He was a big part of the NFC Championship berth for Washington last year. So this not the same Tavita Pritchard that left Stanford in 2022.
And I love the way he talks about his offense. He's going to bring back Smash Mouth football, and knows he knows that the two of the three most important positions in on a football team are the quarterback and the O line, and he is going to make it his focus to have the O line be the heart and soul of the team. That really excites me. Really, 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 really excites me because after years of middling O line play, I'd love to see the
Yeah.
intellectual brutality back in Stanford football.
Yeah.
Um,
Not yeah.
I think, and also I'm excited that I sorry, it gives me reservations that he's going to be calling the offense, but I do understand that it is the natural progression for his coaching development to call an offense himself, because he never called an offense under David Shaw.
Yeah.
Um, I do still think that it is absolutely important to pair him with an experienced and powerful staff. And I'm glad he alluded to that in a press conference. He was going to look for a really good defensive coordinator and a diverse coaching staff. That's going to be so important to pair with an inexperienced head coach. Great hire, great press conference, home run all around. I cannot tell you how many former players have hit me up, even those who have transferred out, say this is a fantastic hire.
Heck yeah. Well, hey, before we end the show, I want to ask before we end the show and Alex does his end of season thing and all that. I want to ask a quick question. I know it's too early to tell. The schedule has not come out yet. We don't know much about 2026, but is there a scenario, let's say in the next a window of 5 years before the end of the decade, let's say, is there a scenario where you see Stanford football winning 10 or 11 games by the end of 2020s?
There obviously is a scenario, but there's a scenario for I think every single team in the country. It's one of those things where they're gonna have to do a lot right. And I think an underrated thing that people may not talk about, I was actually talking to this at the Cal basketball game last night, how the reason Stanford basketball is going to do so well in the future is because they build around their recruits and they add transfers for help, right? Teams who use transfers to build your team are not going to work, right?
That's a good point.
If
Yep.
Stanford wants to win in 2030, they need Tavita Pritchard to be, like you guys said, a really good recruiter, which he can be. And then that one year that he's not able to get an elite receiver, all right, I'll go get a senior receiver from USF to go be great for us, right? But you don't build your team around transfers. You build your team around recruiting. So maybe you have a battle between Mike Mitchell and some okay transfer coming in. Maybe you start Mike Mitchell, right? And maybe years down the line, he becomes really good because he was thrown into the fire early, right? And it could backfire too. But I'm saying certain guys like that, like maybe you want to start some freshman O linemen next year, or maybe you want to start some freshman receivers to see what they're able to do early, or freshman safety because that's going to be a position of need, right? Like certain things like that I think are going to benefit them in the long run. There's no doubt that next year they're not going to do that, and they probably will be far from it. But if they build through their recruiting, through retaining talent, through building a program, not a destination, I think that is the way that Stanford will be elite, I think, in the
Yep.
next couple of
I
years.
agree. I agree.
I agree with the basic premise of what you said. I think that Stanford will always, just by nature of the academic standards, and the
Yeah, they're
way
not a transfer school anyway. They do
they'll
need transfers, but they need to build off of.
yeah, exactly, and they'll never be a a transfer centered program. And yeah, you're right. Transfer center programs don't work. Do I think that we should be going to the portal this offseason to search for a
Absolutely.
good quarterback, to be searching for good O line depth, to be searching for good D line depth? Absolutely, absolutely. Like if you want to win now, if you want to go to a bowl game, that is a prerequisite for this offseason. But I for the long term future, totally agree with you. It's all about developing those guys. And you start by hiring a fantastic staff that helps them out in that way.
Yep, I agree with that. Well, that's the end of our football season show. That's the end of our football season, guys. Truly a pleasure. Before we do our outros, this is going to be Alex's last full-time show. He might be back throughout the offseason
He
if Stanford
absolutely will
football.
be back throughout the
He
off.
sorry, let me rephrase that. He absolutely will be back in the offseason if Stanford football, if there's some big news happening around football or whatever. But in terms of being a full-time member, weekly, week in and week out, this is Alex's last full-time show. Alex, is there anything you would like to say to our viewers before you return to part-time status, as we might say?
First off, thank you, Luca. Thank you, Dylan, for giving me the platform that you have. This has been an absolute pleasure. As I was telling Dylan and Luca before the show, this is the most fun I've had watching Stanford football in 6 years.
And as I said, it's the best,
And
most memorable 4-8 season you're ever gonna see.
exactly. And so I you guys have really helped me through the new podcast, being new to podcasting, and so I really really appreciate everything. I will be I'll still be covering Stanford sports through the account. We'll be watching men's and women's basketball, women's soccer, women's volleyball, and then into the baseball season. I will be covering all of that. But yeah, this is my last full time show. I will be back for any big football related news, especially the transfer portal and stuff. And then we'll see what happens for next year. But I really appreciate you guys both, and also our viewers for being along for the ride.
Oh yeah, well absolutely, Alex. And for those of you guys that do not follow the account, his account is Stanford Football Updates on Twitter and slash X. He posts anything Stanford related. He's a very prominent alum at the school, so he definitely has all the insight. So if you guys want a more in-depth person to give you coverage, he's definitely the account to follow. But as always, guys, thank you guys so much for tuning in. We will have some great content going on through the football off season because there's still basketball, baseball, and plenty of other sports happening on campus. But until then, guys, take care. And as always, go Card.
Go Card.